Evening intuitives. Got another video that's been rolling around in my head and ties into my childhood and some of the things I was interested in my childhood. As you know, if you watch my other videos, I often use things from pop culture to get my points across. Some are more recent, some are dated, like Thundercats, but Thundercats are awesome. If you're my age and you didn't watch Thundercats back in the day, what's wrong with you? But it's a narcissism video. Haven't done one in a little while. I focus more on the INFJ stuff because that's more specific to me. And one of the biggest reasons this channel exists is for me to provide advice and life experience to younger INFJs, advice and experience and mentoring that I wish I had 15 years ago. But alas, channels like this didn't exist, especially like raw, uncut ones, somebody telling events from their life and not just bullet points of, you know, generic information. Hell, there wasn't, even YouTube when I was 18, because that was 2005. It came out the next year. But, some memories from my childhood have been rolling around in my head, and I think I have it pieced together enough that it'll be semi-coherent. Semi. So, what's been on my mind is it seems that a lot of us that grew up in narcissistic families, a lot of us that are the black sheep, are the oldest. And it almost seems like if you're the oldest child in a narcissistic family, you're treated like a prototype, like practice. Like, they just see how things work and then figure out what does and doesn't and treat the younger children much better. And that's certainly the case in my point of view. And that reminded me of a fictional character that I really was, into in the mid 90s when I was a kid and really related to from a popular video game series. And if you recognize the picture, I know what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't, I'm talking about the Mega Man video game series, like the Super Nintendo era back when I was a kid. And Mega Man's older brother, who was known as Proto Man because he was the prototype for all the other robots. He was the first. And I always liked Proto Man more than Mega Man. I always related to him. He was the oldest. He was neglected. He tried to be manipulated into being something that he's not, and he fucked off and left. And basically, he wants to be a force for good. He's a great character because a villain kept him from dying because there was something wrong with him. And if the good guys tried to repair him, he would have lost like his sense of self, and he said he'd rather die as himself than be something that he's not. And I completely relate to that, especially after having lost my purpose of being a professional firefighter. And my narcissistic family my whole life has wanted me to be a landscaper for reasons, because it's Chester County approved, and Chester County's the whole world to them. See my Chestertology video if you're interested in what the hell I mean by that. But Proto Man wants a purpose. He wants to be a force for good, but he was essentially cast out. He's very much a loner on his own accord. I definitely relate to that. And he wants a purpose helping people, as I did. But like me, what I really like about him, and this is all coming together given my recent events, is he doesn't help people for praise or thanks. And he states that in like some of the lore back in the day. I remember him saying, I don't stay for their thanks. I don't need it. Like, he helps people because it's in his nature to do so. That's how he derives his purpose. Same as me. He doesn't do it for praise or money or fame or accolades. He could care less. He's a loner. He likes to keep to the shadows when he can. And later on in the Mega Man series, he would aid Mega Man, his younger brother, when he was in need, but he would keep to the shadows. He would show up and, bail his younger brother out and then be gone again. He wasn't like sticking around for the praise or, to essentially be part of the team. He was going to help, but he was going to do it on his own terms. He was no longer anybody's fool and nobody was the boss of him. He very much valued his free will, something that could have been stolen from him had he allowed himself to be repaired by Dr. Light. Those of us that are in narcissistic families, a lot of us can definitely relate to this as the firstborn, as the narcissist prototype. They try to make you into the quote perfect child, what they want, which in a lot of cases, and a lot of people who talk about narcissistic abuse, they want, A plus student, if you're an A minus student, B plus, A minus, like I was, not good enough. You're on the honor roll, not good enough. It has to be the distinguished honor roll because it's in the paper, and that's a reflection on them. And of course, you have to play sports, but you have to play the sport that they want you to play. You have to be the football star, even if you're the assistant captain of, say, the hockey team, the travel team, which is a higher level than the high school team. That's not good enough because it has nothing to do with the high school and popularity and prom and all that's king. Apparently, high school popularity and prom is even like above, if I don't know, if you get a modeling contract in your late teens and you model for Kenneth Cole. That it's not for the school, so who gives a shit about that? But the money, yeah, weird. So as the narcissist prototype, they try to steal from you your free will and try to mold you into what they want. And in doing so, inevitably, that's why a lot of us black sheep have rebellious streaks, and we're often labeled as crazy. Crazy because we want to be who we are and not simply fall in line like a robot into the mold that they have chosen for us. And then we later see that our younger siblings get much more autonomy and are allowed to be themselves no matter what that is. Like, for example, in my teens, I always had a full-time job. I was a junior firefighter. I was putting myself through EMT school at 17. I went to the gym all the time. As I said, at that point I was starting to get into the modeling industry. I hadn't made it to the local stuff. I wasn't doing Kenneth Cole stuff yet, but that all wasn't good enough. And B plus average, in school in honors classes. That was unacceptable because it was a rebellion against what the narcs wanted. But, the golden child, he could not work, just hang out, smoke pot, do whatever he wanted, gamble, and that was fine, apparently, because he was allowed to be him. But when you're the oldest, when you're the prototype, it's all guesswork. It doesn't matter what you want. And the Proto Man said that. And I remember another distinct Proto Man quote where he essentially said before he left, he's like, "What about what I want?" And that was never considered, as it is for the oldest child of the narcissist. What you want's never considered. The narcissist has this image of what you're supposed to be to best, give the narcissist praise and acolytes. The same happened, using Proto Man again. He was to be molded into this weapon, into this militaristic tool in order to get Dr. Light more funding so he could build the type of robots he actually wanted to build, because he didn't want to build military robots, but he was reliant on military funding. Hence, Proto Man didn't have a choice. He had to be made into a weapon. Wasn't really too keen on that, although he did like helping people. But again, he wanted a function. He didn't want those functions to change on a whim. He refused to be loyal to somebody who could undo him in a whim. And that's basically how a narcissist treats their oldest. You exist only to give them praise and acolytes. That you're a reflection on me. I'm sure others of you listening to this have heard that saying. So, it didn't matter what you wanted. And we're not talking about things where it'd be understandable to not be accepting of, like reckless behavior or illegal activities. We're talking about simply setting one's own path and not, just being like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do, or be a landscaper and live in Chester County, or be, like a fucking James Franco, douchebag man whore, because that'll make other people think I'm cool, and just basically living one's life based on what somebody else wants for you and what other people think about you. I refuse to live a life where my purpose is derived on what others think of me. I very much care about preserving my own integrity and having some purpose in a force for good in the world. More and more as the years go on, I'm finding out that it seems that my calling is to challenge the old boys club system and do my best to call it out, and if not destroy it, at least help make, the term old boy or good old boy when somebody gets called that, at least to make it a pejorative, as it should be in this day and age. But that sense of freedom and sense of self when you're the firstborn or the prototype, it's hard. I mean, a lot of us, Ollie Matthews, for example, spoke about how, like, well into his teens, he felt like he had no sense of identity, of who he was, because he was always trying to pretend to be someone that he wasn't around the narcissist in order to survive and experience less narcissistic abuse. And that's another common thing for a lot of us. You try to pretend to be something that you're not. Now, I'm really bad at that. I'm an INFJ. I'm very authentic and have a lot of integrity, and I'm a horrible actor. So the idea of pretending to be somebody I'm not, I just can't do it, or at least not for very long. And by very long, I mean a few minutes. So that really, didn't come into play much for me. But I was, tried to have been browbeaten into following fads and basically adapting my likes and dislikes and my values to whatever was popular at the time, blowing in the wind, ride the wave like the Clintons do. They're the masters at that, of being just conniving opportunists, which I refuse to be. So understand, if you're the firstborn of a narcissist, in a lot of ways, you were treated like their prototype, as a narcissist's children only exist as an extension of themselves in order to award the narcissist more praise and accolades, or for them to ride your coattails, or for them to gain supply off of you. So if you're like me, if you were the rebellious prototype and you have found your sense of purpose, no matter what it is, no matter how much the narcissist may try to get in your way, dissuade you away from it, or, like in my case, actually try to sabotage your path, keep on defying. Do not let them choose your function for you. You choose your function. You may be a prototype, but even a prototype has free will.